Welcome to this tutorial for the Carenado Pilatus PC-12 for MSFS. This tutorial is from a runway start with engines on, and we've also planned our flight in the Sims world map. Heading into the flight deck, we'll first hit B to set our altimeter to the local pressure. We can now move over to the Autopilot panel where we'll activate Flight Director and Nav mode. If we look at the flight plan page of the Garmin G530, we can scroll through and see the plan we made in the world map. You can see here we've got an ILS approach at Cardiff, so we're now going to tune the ILS frequency of our destination. First we switch the selector over to localizer, dial in the ILS frequency at Cardiff, and then flick that frequency over to the primary slot. Continuing our setup, we'll configure our climb. So we're going to cruise today at a fairly low altitude of 12,000 feet. We'll now switch into vertical speed mode and we'll want to climb at around 1,500 feet per minute. Before takeoff, set the engine condition lever to flight idle. With pre-flight complete, we'll bring the throttles up gently and the PC-12 starts to rotate with a half tank of fuel at just over 100 knots. We'll pull back on the stick and as soon as we have positive rate, bring the landing gear up. We can activate autopilot almost immediately afterwards. The plane will start to follow our flight plan. On the vertical speed controls, we'll also hit engage and the airplane will start to climb at our desired rate. As we climb out, keep the throttles pinned and retract the flaps. As we climb, we'll check out some of the systems. So we've got this Avidyne system here, which contains some features such as a map, a terrain radar, a list of our en route waypoints, a list of our nearest airports, and a weather radar. So as we climb out, we'll take a look at the annunciators on the PFD. We're in nav mode, vertical speed mode with autopilot and yaw damper on. Throttles fully forward, just below 200 knots. Taking a closer look at some of these systems, we also have a Garmin 430 below the primary GPS. This secondary unit, the smaller unit, has the same functionality as the 530. For example, it's got a map and the ability to select procedures and view your flight plan. For this flight, we'll just leave it on our flight plan page so we can see it alongside the map. Just before our top of climb, we'll hit altitude arm and the airplane will level off at the altitude we set on the vertical speed controller, which is 12,000. Remember while in flight to set your altimeter to standard pressure above the transition altitude in your country and set it to local altimeter on the way back down. So when directed to descend by ATC, we'll select the altitude they give us, which is 3,000 feet. We'll disable altitude hold mode and select a vertical speed of minus 2,000 feet per minute, then hit engage. We'll also move the throttles to the idle position for our descent. During our descent, the annunciators you should see on the PFD are again nav and vertical speed, with a vertical speed of minus 2,000 feet per minute indicated. As we get closer to our destination airport, it's possible you might want to activate your approach early. You can do this in the procedures menu as shown here, or if you don't want to do that, just back out using the flight plan key. And the plane will automatically activate approach at the correct time. So as we reach our bottom of descent, we hit altitude arm. The airplane starts to level off and we'll set power as shown here to maintain an airspeed of around 100 knots. On this flight, ATC has given us a step descent, which we initiate the same way as our first descent that was shown earlier in the video. As we reach our bottom of descent, we'll drop the landing gear and set flaps to approach. As always, at bottom of descent, altitude arm and the airplane will maintain that altitude. For approach, I've set throttle to maintain about 100 knots. As we begin our turn towards final, you can see our flight path towards the runway here. Switch nav source to localizer, activate approach mode, which will display as armed. When the plane intercepts the localizer, approach mode will light and the aircraft will also descend on the glide slope. I'll show you my throttle position here for our final descent. The airplane continues to follow the localizer and the glide slope as we break through the clouds. The autopilot disengages at around 400. For some reason it's brought us in slightly high here, so we'll idle the throttles, now we're over the threshold, and start to bring the aircraft in for a manual landing. And that concludes our full flight tutorial in the PC-12. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you found this useful. Take care, and I'll see you next time.